Sports are a big deal. About 35 million youth play some type of sport, and many others are engaged in physical activities. These athletes train hard, often pushing themselves to their physical and mental limits in hopes of reaching the top of their sport. A sometimes overlooked factor in their performance is the gear they wear. Let's look closer at how clothing can protect the athlete from impact injury. Protective equipment is critical for contact and collision sports. This may be obvious for sports like football, lacrosse, biking, and skateboarding, but athletes are also at risk of impact injury if they fall or bump into another player. In the past, bulky, heavy, stiff materials were used in protective sports equipment, but they did not allow the players to move easily and sometimes contributed to heat stress or exhaustion. With new technologies, these materials can be thin, flexible, lightweight, and breathable, and still offer improved full impact protection. What is good for the athlete is also good for us. You may be wearing shoes made with special cushioning materials that reduce the strain on your body and lessen the impact when your feet touch the ground. To learn how researchers work to improve impact protection for athletes, let's visit Dr. Deborah King.
Impact protection is really important in figure skating and other sports because the muscles and the bones and the joints and cartilage and tendons can only take so much force before they'll reach failure and break. And you can have overuse injuries, which are things like stress fractures, or you can have contusions, lacerations, just acute broken bones. So if we can control the impact, we can make it safer for athletes, and they'll be able to train better and perform better. We're measuring the impact forces in figure skating, but it's really cool because we can apply this technology to all sorts of different sports and situations. So you can put force transducers in football helmets and measure impact forces, which is interesting because of the concussions in football, which is a big problem right now. In running shoes, running has a high injury rate, and there are different types of shoes being designed now, like the minimalist shoes. So measuring impact forces in runners is really important and interesting. Any sport you can think of, gymnastics, you can instrument the equipment like the vaults and the balance beam, look at the impact forces in that. Hockey, you can have the impact forces not of the blades in the ice, but against the boards or against the people. So there's endless possibilities of where you could potentially measure impact forces and learn about how the human body works and how to protect the athletes or just people in everyday life. We have reflective markers on the figure skater so that the camera system can make a 3D model of the way her body moves. And we're going to see a model of the legs from sort of the hips down, and from that we can look at the angles and the motion of the body. And then while she's jumping and landing onto a force plate, we're going to be able to measure the impact forces. So those are the forces between the blade and the ground. So underneath this sort of plastic synthetic ice surface, we have a force plate, which measures the forces acting up on her and also measures sideways forces. And from these forces, we could, if we wanted to, calculate the torque and the forces up the body, so like at the ankle joint, the knee joint, and the hip joints. And that tells us how the sort of the load is distributed across the segments of the body and what structures might be prone to injury.
To demonstrate how materials and construction strategies are used in impact protection, try the classic egg drop activity. Construct a protective device for your egg using common materials that have different properties. For example, your materials might be smooth, soft, thick, rigid, spongy, or filled with air pockets. Drop the egg in its container from a height of 1 or 2 stories. Did your egg survive? Did it crack? We can apply what we learned in the egg drop to understanding how a protective helmet works. It not only has a strong, hard outer shell, it also has an inner layer of compression material to absorb the impact forces.
Understanding and studying impact forces is really important in sports for designing equipment, keeping athletes safe, potentially changing rules, and just the way they train so that they can compete successfully. And then in everyday life, in like ergonomics and occupational settings, understanding impact forces can make workers safe. In your everyday life, lifting loads, going about grocery shopping, all those things, biomechanics is used to study the forces on the body and try to prevent injuries and improve functioning.